we realized and we thought, since people are not going to talk about Netaji death mystery or even Subhash Chandra Bose or whatever reason, but they cannot run away from declassifications if we make an issue out of declassification. So in response, government was compelled to give us records. So they didn't give us all of them. They gave us out of these 200 to 90 odd records, they gave it to us. So somebody by mistake allowed the release of 2 files or 3 files which were not supposed to be released. They were trailing Subhash Bose's family. They were trailing just about everybody linked to Subhash Bose, including foreigners, children, journalists. Everybody was under surveillance, and they were just trying to find out what was happening. So not a single sibling of Subhash Bose ever supported that he died in plane crash. Not a single nephew, niece, other than those who were linked to Congress party, they never backed. So government released some of the files, did nothing, and the family also clammed upon this issue for some other reason. So thereafter, the whole momentum collapsed. And since that time, the family does not even talk about the issue of Netaji's death. Where was he when this whole thing was happening, declassification thing was happening? These people were nowhere to be seen. Why was Netaji's daughter not keen about declassification? So Prabhat Shankar Mishra, I met him, he's no more, but anyhow, I'm quoting his judgment. So this is not coming from what he told me. What he told me was very atrocious, but what he wrote in his court judgment, he asked the government lawyer, what is your stand? And there's another very interesting thing you would appreciate. Every time in our country, we've had a non-Congress government. There is some development in Netaji case. Stalin called Panditji a political prostitute. So Stalin is abusing her every day. And Netaji raised the INA War Memorial for the war dead very quickly and it was raised and eventually it was demolished by the British, but in Singapore, now the Singapore government has, if you go to Singapore, you'll see a plaque there. A small monument is there. So the bigger one used to stand in the same spot. It was, the order was carried out by Colonel John Stracey. He was an Anglo-Indian, and so there were many Anglo-Indians in also, not only Christians. There were many Anglo-Indians who were there, part of the Subhash Chandra Bose's fight for India. So if I can establish without any reasonable doubt that he died in Taiwan, so he cannot be dead in Russia. Now, if somebody were to establish without any shadow of doubt that he died in Russia, you have Russian soldiers, killed him. There's a firing squad. This is his grave. We have done the DNA testing. This is a photo of his dead body. So you have to have a clear evidence. You just cannot say somebody told me so.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Bharata First and welcome to this special telecast. I have a truly special guest with me on the program on this very auspicious and an important day. Jan 23rd marks the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And less said about the man, the better, because he has truly captivated the entire nation, done so much for this country, and really fought for this country tooth and nail. And to talk about him, his life, and more importantly, his death, because about 7 years ago during this time, we all seem to be speaking about the death of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. But now in 2022, no one seems to be talking about it anymore. Why? Why shouldn't we talk about this important aspect? What is it all about? And Life After Death, that is a book that Anuj Dhar has written. He is an author, he is an expert on the death of Subhash Chandra Bose and life after the death as well. And it is a pleasure to welcome on the program right now, Anuj Dhar.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you for having me here in Bharata First. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. So let me start with this aspect. About 7 years ago, 7 साल पहले तो बहुत चर्चा हो रही थी मीडिया में, सोशल मीडिया पे, हर जगह. You're talking about the death of Subhash Chandra Bose, the mystery surrounding it, and even political parties were talking about it. Suddenly, all that is forgotten. Why?
Actually, मेरा सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम फ्रैंक है कि स्टोरी बहुत लंबी, लॉन्ग एंड वाइंडिंग स्टोरी है, बहुत लंबी चौड़ी स्टोरी है. कहानी की शुरुआत, जैसा कि आपने अभी बोला, पहली बात तो ये कि आज 23 जनवरी है, नेताजी का 125th बर्थ एनिवर्सरी है, और ये इसी साल में हमारे देश का 75th ईयर ऑफ इंडियाज इंडिपेंडेंस भी मनाया जा रहा है. तो ये दोनों जो कन्वर्जेंस हो रहा है उसको लेकर के नेताजी और फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल इस पूरे साल हाईलाइट में रहेंगे. इसी तरह का काम हुआ था आज से 25 साल पहले, जब नेताजी के 100th ईयर हुए थे 1997 में, और देश का 50th एनिवर्सरी हुआ था. उस टाइम पे भी कमोशन हुआ था, बट ऑफ कोर्स मीडिया इतना स्ट्रांग नहीं था जमाने में. वी हैड नो सोशल मीडिया, नथिंग, वी डिडंट हैव चैनल्स आल्सो, बट काफी कमोशन हुआ था. उस जमाने में भी पार्लियामेंट में सुभाष बोस की मूर्ति लगी थी, उस टाइम पे, और सरकार को कुछ फाइलें डिक्लासिफाई करनी पड़ी थी। करने का तरीका और था, उनको चुपचाप से नेशनल आर्काइव में डाल दिया गया। अभी भी वहाँ पड़ी हैं, अभी भी लोगों ने फाइलें वो देखी नहीं है, बहुत कम लोगों, मैंने भी, मेरे को भी बड़ी मुश्किल से जाके हाथ लगी कुछ फाइलें। अभी जो मोमेंटम की आप बात कर रहे हैं कि 6-7 साल पे, यू एज यू करेक्टली सेड कि देयर वाज लॉट ऑफ टॉक अबाउट नेताजी डेथ मिस्ट्री, एंड सडनली द इंटरेस्ट सीम्स टू हैव plummeted, and government has often, what happened that in 2005 or so, I was a former journalist then, and I had written a book about Subhash Chandra Bose's death. Whatever I wrote in 2005, I more or less the same thing I say today. I've been saying the same thing for all these years, which I'll tell you, of course. And we got together, and we people. This is the story how the whole thing became big news in 2015, 16. What we that means we didn't have Facebook, Twitter, YouTube in those days. We used to have, you would recall, Yahoo chat rooms. So we got together, like-minded people in different parts of the country and abroad. So eventually a group came out of it. Srijit Panikkar was in Trivandrum. He still is, if not the leading, commentator on, on talent channels in Malayalam and also in English. Srijit was in Trivandrum. Chandrachud Ghosh was in UK. Shayantan and myself were in Delhi, and so was Vishal. And there were others here in America and so on and so forth. Eventually, हम लोग 5 लोगों ने group हमने उसका नाम रखा मिशन नेताजी. We said we gotta do something about it, because by this time there was a inquiry report of Justice Manoj Kumar Mukherjee Commission to Subhash Bose's death, which was rejected by Government of India without giving any reason. So we said we got to do something about it. We knew in advance what was going to happen because we were keeping a tab on the whole case. So we knew in advance what was going to happen, and we thought we have to do something. But what do we do? What do we do? There was no interest in that. In fact, media was also not very keen about this case. Even if you pushed it, I mean, you go to somebody and say, okay, fine, I'll put a, give us some story in, like, inside में 7 page में कुछ दे देंगे. Yeah, Sunday magazine में there'll be a story on the like 3rd, 4th page, and then we'll cover both the side story. He says this, he says that, end of the story. You will not draw any conclusion, and you will not touch the sensitive parts. By this time, luckily, as luck would have it, we had this Right to Information Act coming into force in 2005. So this is where we thought of why not we make use of the Right to Information Act and try to get the information out. And initially, when I shot down the idea, so no, government is not going to give us anything. Then the idea struck me, being a former journalist, and you would appreciate that if it's a negative news, it will probably make more news. The denial of information probably will make better news than they're giving us information. So then we filed an application with the Home Ministry, and we sought certain papers and records. And we wanted to know, so we put the question that you have rejected the report of the Commission of Inquiry, and you have done so because you say that there was a previous inquiry in which government thinks they were more credible. Give us the documents about those inquiries. And the government gave us a denial, that's like national security and so on and so forth. Now, under the right to information or whatever, now you have to, like, you can appeal within the government first, or if you're not satisfied, then you can go to the Central Information Commission. Now, 2005 and 6, you'll recall the RTI was being discussed, like it was a buzzword in those days.
Right.
Today it's not, maybe in that, but it was because a new thing, new thing had happened. So it was a buzzword. Same thing happened in America, when they had enacted the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, President Johnson. It was a big thing in America, and now 80s. Now I think nobody gives much attention to FOIA. So we studied the FOIA. We studied so many things. In particular, studied the what happened to JFK controversy, how Oliver Stone made a film about it in 1991, and suddenly everybody in America wanted to have the documents about Kennedy declassified about his assassination. So we drew, inspiration from that part, and we started doing our own work. We would like to, replicate this idea in India, and we would like information about Netaji be declassified. Ideally, it should be like JFK Records Act of America, whereby the American Congress enacted an act. We wanted something of that sort, but let's start creating the ground. And we realized, and we thought, since people are not going to talk about Netaji death mystery or even Subhash Chandra Bose or whatever reason, but they cannot run away from declassifications if we make an issue out of declassification, because that is something about transparency, it's about democracy. This is not about just Subhash Chandra Bose, it's a larger issue. And even if people don't agree with it, publicly they will not oppose it. And government denied us information. We went to the Information Commission. Mind you, the Information Commission in those days, all the commissioners were there because of the government of the day. And because our data was very clear, our documents were solid, the commission ruled in our favor. And it so happened in the course of the commission's proceeding, which are on on record. Anybody can Google search and find it. And Government of India accepted that the Ministry of Home Affairs, because it was a quasi judicial sort of courtroom sort of thing. You have the Chief Information Commissioner Shri Vajat Habibullah ji sitting there, and you have the other commissioners. Mr. Tiwari was there, Padma Subramanian Madam was there, you have others, all, and Professor Ansari was there. These were all governments head of the day had appointed these information commissioners. So it was an extraordinary hearing because it's a very important case. 5 of them, and on the other side you have the Ministry of Home Affairs people. I believe somebody from the IB was also there. The way he looked at me, I could make out actually. So they were not able to give any cogent arguments to our arguments, and they accepted on record that Ministry of Home Affairs is holding something like 70,000 pages concerning Subhash Bose's death, and some of which were so highly volatile that if disclosed, it would lead to law and order problem across the country, especially in West Bengal. This, they said it on record. And commission couldn't understand. The commissioner couldn't make. In fact, they were, Bajaj Saab was in government, of course. He was in the PM when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister. Mr. Tiwari was a former secretary of the Government of India. And so these people couldn't understand what was happening. And so they ruled in our favor. They said, no, you cannot, in this age and time, you cannot, keep files, secret. You have to, make them public. So all these 70,000 pages you're talking about, they must be released and sent to National Archive. And these people have, asked specifically for 202 records. Give them those records. So in response, government was compelled to give us records. So they didn't give us all of them. They gave us out of these 202, 90 odd records. They gave it to us. For example, not given to us was a very important report of the Director of Military Intelligence about Mahatma Gandhi's view on Subhash Bose's death. That was not given to us. So they concealed the the juicy part, and whatever was left, which they thought was not juicy enough, they gave. In fact, it was fantastic. A lot of IB stuff was given to us. So they gave us those papers. And out of these 20,000, 70,000 odd pages, which they admitted they had, the ministry released something like 16,000 pages, and they were cleared by the government and they were sent to National Archive. Now, as it happens, it takes time for, so many thousands of pages to be, vetted. And then you have to, you have to put them in proper files and preserve them. So this thing takes time. So it so happened it was only by the end of 2014 that these 70,000 pages became available in the National Archives in Delhi. And since we were the only ones doing this thing, so I went there to see what's happening. Now, Frank, the funny thing is that, when you, it has happened even in America and other countries, when you undertake en masse declassification of files, humans are prone to making errors.
Yeah.
So somebody by mistake allowed the release of 2 files or 3 files which were not supposed to be released. And these were the photocopies. These were not even original, but it's coming from the ministry. And as I, looked, I somehow at luck would have it, and I happened to see that file, when I went to the National Archive. And I looked at it and I called my friend Chandrachud Ghosh. I said, look, this is a Watergate scandal here. So now for the benefit of, young people who are listening to us, the Watergate scandal is the most notorious scandals, in the history of political science. And it's a very simple thing. If you see from our perspective, Indian, it's a very simple thing. The president of America was trying to snoop among the opposition parties, the opposition party of the day, which is the Democratic Party. And some people from the CIA were sent to bug the office of the Democratic Party in a building known as Watergate complex of buildings in Washington, D.C. And they were caught. They were taken to court. So they admitted that they were from the government side. They were working for the CIA previously. And eventually it turned out it was, at the behest of the president, this thing was done. Or he was in the know, he was in the loop. And that created a huge, hangama in America. The media, the judiciary, everybody ran after the president. And he was forced to resign. This never happened in the American history. So this was the sin of, President Nixon, that he tried to spy upon the opposition party by planting those, small devices, bugs, as they call them. I was there in America giving my lecture, and I used to tell them, you guys, amateurs, if you had sent these people to us, we would have trained them because we are past masters in this game. This is a very simple thing, put devices here and there. We have been doing with fantastic results. In fact, when I opened that file, I found out we were doing the same thing. They were trailing Subhash Bose's family. They were trailing just about everybody linked to Subhash Bose, including foreigners, children, journalists. Everybody was under surveillance. And they were just trying to find out what was happening. And this is how I wrote about it first. And then India Today turned into a cover story. and the hell broke loose everywhere. And this is how Subhash Chandra Bose issue became very big issue in 2015. And the beneficiary of this whole thing were the Subhash Bose's family members, because they were suddenly thrown into limelight. Because the spying was happening against their family and others, and they were there to talk about it. So when you ask me, yes, this was the time, and this is how the whole thing blew up. And government said that they're going to release certain files. So West Bengal government did release the files, which they were not willing to release earlier, but they released some intelligence files which supported the findings that snooping was happening. Mamata Banerjee made public statement that Subhash Bose did not die, and snooping was happening. And then just about everybody, I'm talking about mainstream media, and including the BJP, everybody said that the snooping means only one thing: they were looking for the real person. The government of the day, the intelligence did not believe the theory which they were feeding to the people, the Subhash Bose has died, because they were, by keeping a tap on each and every body linked to Subhash Bose, they were essentially trying to find out what the person Subhash Chandra Bose. So this is how the whole thing became big news. And first we had declassification in Bengal. Then Modi ji, of course, called us. In between, what was happening, that we had by this time, us, Mission Netaji, and Subhash Chandra Bose's family. My book came out in 2012, India's biggest cover up. And in this book, whatever information was available to me by this time, and all this, what I have just told you about the right to information and freedom of information, and the whatever information we could get from America, England, and India, we created a platform for that, and we explained to people that this is something which has to be done. Declassification is the idea. And I went to Calcutta in 2012, and there was a marriage in the Bose family. So many people from the family had gathered in Calcutta. So we discussed, I said, look, you need to come out and say all this thing, because there were a lot of misconception about Subhash Bose's death mystery. And one of them was that his family backs the story of plane crash. No. A particular branch of the family with link to Congress party was very well known in media circle. They were the ones who were saying. Otherwise, 99%, not a single sibling of Subhash Bose ever supported that he died in plane crash. Not a single nephew, niece, other than those who were linked to Congress party. They never backed. So I asked them, you got to come out. And just as been happening in Delhi over Jessica Lal case and other cases, we must take out candle marches, candlelight marches, and we should go out, do press conferences, and tell media this is what is happening. So by this time, when the 2015 thing blew up, we had created this ground that by this time we had managed to get news in media here and there. We had done candle march on 23rd of January, Subhash Bose's birth anniversary in 2013. Seeking declassification of files. So we were, and by this time, the family at my behest had met Mr. Modi, because we had been given information that Mr. Modi was keen on Subhash Bose. This is when he was still the Gujarat Chief Minister. I'm talking about 2013. So many people, when they say that Modi is doing it for political, no, Modi was doing it even earlier. So he's talking about Netaji even when he was a Gujarat Chief. So it's unfair to say that he picked it up only just now, or there's some kind of election happening in Bengal. No, there was no election happening in 2013 in Bengal, and he was still Gujarat Chief Minister, and he talked about Netaji, and the family met him there. The letter was given to him, which was drafted by me and my friend. And so this happened, and this blew up. The government released many files, but they did not release the files that we wanted them to release first, which is the intelligence file, which they have not done. In fact, they're lying through their teeth in Parliament by saying we have released all the files. No, you haven't touched even single intelligence file. So government released some of the files, did nothing. And the family also clammed upon this issue for some other reason. So thereafter, the whole momentum collapsed. And since that time, the family does not even talk about the issue of Netaji's death. They have stopped talking about it. They were talking about for 50 odd years. I'll tell you why, Ishwan. But they stopped talking. So the whole momentum stopped. And I believe, because I was on almost just about every TV channel, everybody was expecting something big to happen in 2016. January, Subhash Bose's birth anniversary, and didn't happen. Files were released, but not the intelligence, not the actual custom matter. So I think media lost interest in this case. So this is what has happened, to answer your question, because it's a very long and winding thing. There's no other way I can, I cannot explain it. And this is the biggest problem with me. I cannot give in one liner. I can't answer. It's next to impossible to go to a TV channel and they ask you a question and I can't answer in one line. It's very complicated.
It is extremely complicated. It is complex. There is so many aspects to be brought up and so many different dimensions and angles to be brought in as well. You have to take your time to explain something like this. You're talking about misconceptions, Anuj. So what are some of the other common misconceptions regarding Netaji's death?
Misconception, let me say, because yesterday I saw something news about his daughter making some statement about, okay, Netaji died. So people ask me that when Netaji's daughter, Dr. Anita Faf, is saying that he died, so why should you question? Well, again, it's very bit complex, and I would say that I would believe her mother more than I would believe her. She was 2 years old child, when her father died. It's her mother. Emily Schenkel died in 1996. She never believed. She was the reason the government of India could not, because if you go by the official version of history, there was a plane crash in the present day Taipei city. Subhash Chandra Bose died there, and and the ashes, he was cremated there. They couldn't, take the body anywhere else, and these ashes or remains were taken to Tokyo, and they have since then been kept in a temple called Renkuji Temple in Japan, in Tokyo. And people want these ashes to be brought back to India. So the problem ki these could not be brought back to India because Netaji's wife was not, she didn't believe. So when people quote her daughter, his daughter, or her daughter, they forget to quote her mother. And the people who probably knew the best about this entire case were Subhash Chandra Bose's elder brother, Sharat Chandra Bose. And he was a very eminent lawyer. He was a politician. He was he was the one who was looking after his younger brother. He was in politics. He was the closest person to him. Sharat also did his inquiry. He went to Europe. He had contacts with people who were in Japan. He personally examined the main eyewitness of the plane crash, and he made a public statement, published in newspaper, that my brother did not die. This is all, a ploy. And it is very interesting to see that the very grandchildren of this great man, Sharat Chandra Bose, one sitting in London, others teaching at Harvard, are spreading all kind of lies, but not talking about what their own grandfather said. This is what, being in Congress does to some people. And this misconception about Professor Shogata Bose does not believe you. He is teaching at Harvard University. He speaks such fantastic English, so he must be telling the truth. No, you got to keep this in mind. His father was in Congress party, his mother was in Congress party, his own family calls him Congress stooge. Then no, there's a very eminent journalist, Ashish Ray. He used to work for London, Shogata's cousin. He's in London. Mr. Ray came out with a book recently. Well, again, I'm sorry to say, please understand, his own family has brought out a statement that he's a Congress stooge, and he makes no bones about it. Where was he when this whole thing was happening? Declassification thing was happening. These people were nowhere to be seen. Why was Netaji's daughter not keen about declassification? She's in the name of God. She's a professor. She used to be a professor in Germany. The idea of declassification, I met personally. We've had long talks. We try to persuade her. You should be the one talking about declassification before anybody else. She had no interest. So there are a lot of misconception about in the whole scenario and what's been happening. And another thing, for example, the people don't know because these things have not been reported. Today, they might want to speak about the plane crash story as if this is gospel truth. The problem is when government was cornered in a court of law, they said there was no, there's no, the evidence is very sketchy, it's not adding up, it's contradictory, and so on and so forth. So they speak in different languages in different places. So this whole issue has become very muddied because of these confusions, and people talk different things, and we are not able to confront them. People from the government, as it happens on the media, on channels. Usually, you get spin doctors. You would know better than me. These are not experts. These are spin doctors. They are adept in the art of arguing with you, or even quarreling with you, and they will hurl personal insult, question your motives. That's their job. Usually they're lawyers, so they know how to throw things at you. We should rather have people coming from the PMO, somebody from the government should come and answer these questions. If I want to know why the government of the day is not releasing the intelligence files, I don't want a spin doctor to come to me and start talking about taking it back to Panditji's time. Panditji is not the prime minister of the country, right? No, Modi ji is. So this thing has created a lot of confusion in the minds of people. What are the case it is, what is happening, and we need to sort. So this is what me and my friends have been doing for a long time. We're trying to clear up things and present facts to people so that they can take an informed stand, as we have taken an informed stand. Look, on the basis of evidence. And people keep on saying again, Noko, what is your belief? And this is my belief. No, when you get into these kind of questions, these kind of complex problems, any problem, any issue of historical fact, we should keep everybody has their own biases. I also have my own bias. I'm a human being. But when I'm looking into a subject matter of history, I will just go by evidence, not by what I personally feel.
Absolutely. And the nation also deserves to know at the end of the day, because this is such an important issue, and each one of us, the entire nation, is captivated by this entire issue and wants to know the truth. Talking about this, Anuj, if you look at the life of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose as well, he was one of those leaders that broke all barriers, and everyone
Yep.
could connect to him for some reason. Otherwise, you have this thing of a north and south divide, or all
Oh,
those smaller issues come into being, but not with him. What was it
no,
about
yeah,
him?
friend, yeah, absolutely, friend. No, no divide. This ever, I think nobody could unite country like he did. Forget about like North and South. Every caste community. When Subhash Chandra Bose had this thing, his INA, or Azad Hind Sarkar. Well, one misconception, people always call him that he was the leader of INA. He was not the leader of INA. He was the Prime Minister and President of the Azad Hind government in exile, recognized by 6, 7 countries. And Azad Hind Fauj was the military arm of that this thing. So he was, and they were Azad Hind government had its own bank, its own government, its own machinery, its own spy service. So it was a full-fledged government in exile. It's not just a one army. So where, if you think in terms of, let's say, for example, the INA, the which we Azad Hind Fauj, as we usually were people who were taken in were from the Punjab regiment. So they were, the bulk of them were Punjabis, and I think, and most likely more than 50% are Muslims, and then rest of the Punjabis, and most of all of them are Punjabis usually. But if you keep in mind the entire system in place, it was essentially, there were a lot of South Indians, Tamils in particular. That's why you have, if you go to interiors in Tamil Nadu and Andhra and all, you'll find Netaji's statues, his name. People in fact have names. People are named after Subhash Bose. So he was the one who was able to, get the, all these barriers of Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai. So many Muslims fought. In fact, this will, delight you to know and even surprise you. People, when, because Pakistan, India was, despite their fight for a united India, the country was divided. Netaji, whatever happened to him, the death happened 45, whatever it was. So he was not there. INA was, of course, couldn't continue the fighting, and people were brought here. You had the Red Fort trials. Country was divided. So people, many INA men stayed here, both Hindu and Muslims. But some of the Muslims INA men were, they had to go where, that part of the country, and they became part of Pakistan. Some of them joined Pakistani government, fairly high-ranking people, and their children are very fairly high-ranking. Until date, they don't talk nonsense about him. They have highest regard for him. So I give you example of, for example, Habibur Rahman, who was the ADC of Subhash Bose. So he was handling, can you believe, the China desk in Pakistani Foreign Ministry in 1967. He was interviewed by a Japanese, and he asked him about Subhash Bose. And this is happening in Pakistan, and it's coming from the mouth of a senior Pakistani government official who's handling the China desk in Pakistan Foreign Ministry. He retired as the additional defense secretary of Pakistan. And he said it, and this is published in book in that. He said Subhash Chandra Bose, Netaji, was the biggest revolutionary this entire subcontinent has given birth to. Kiani wrote, he became a part, Kiani was, of the INA. He became minister under Ziaul Haq. That point in time, when you would appreciate. After retirement, he wrote a book about Subhash Bose, the great INA and Subhash Bose, whatever the name was, published in Rawalpindi in 78. And he says very clearly this, he was the only man acceptable to both Hindus and Muslims. So people talk about him, such was, and think of the women he brought, the women power. I don't know why government of India keeps on, celebrating the days to commemorate the NRI community with Gandhiji. It was Subhash Bose who harnessed the power of the Indians abroad. Gandhiji, I'm told he actually failed in South Africa. So, but this is a thing, why don't you do it? In the manner he brought women, harnessed their power. Most of them are South Indians to the freedom struggle. In fact, if you look at the posters or even the movie stars in those 1940s, women used to not look straight into the camera. It was not deemed, it was sort of an affront. The woman is looking straight into my eyes. So in those days, he made women hold guns in their hand, actually, and they actually went to combat. So think about, what he was doing. So, and so many things happen. I also recall very interesting, facet, because there is talk of INA war memorial, to be built. So there's some, on this probably we'll see some developments. And Netaji raised the INA war memorial for the war dead very quickly, and it was raised and eventually it was demolished by the British. But in Singapore, now the Singapore government has If you go to Singapore, you'll see a plaque there. A small monument is there. So the bigger one was used to stand the same very spot. It was the order was carried out by Colonel John Stracey. He was an Anglo-Indian, and so there were many Anglo-Indians in also. Now, not only Christians, there were many Anglo-Indians who were there, part of the Subhash Chandra Bose's fight for India. And in my book, Chandrachud, in my book, Conundrum, we have given reference to it, this particular part also, and we produced a government record. Stracey, when he was put in the Redford trial, and they were all tried as war criminals, so he was met by the community leaders, and he made a very stirring speech, and which is part of the government record. So look, the fight for our motherland is going on, so our community has to also play its part. So this was the level to which Subhash was able to bring all people from all part of the country, all region and religions, and fight for the country. So this is a fantastic, I don't know, my limited knowledge, this didn't happen earlier. And this kind of a unity which Netaji brought and bridged all divides. And that's why, no matter which part of the country one goes to, I have been traveling all over India and even abroad, I get the same affection from everybody. People have so much liking for this man, and all of them admit that there was no patriot like him. Even Gandhiji had to admit that he was a prince among patriots.
Absolutely. Yeah, going back to a point that you were making earlier, about sensitive information, and you have done extensive research studies on Netaji and his death. So what is the sensitive information that, that we are trying to hide, that the governments are not wanting to come out into the open? It's the truth. Everyone wants to know the truth. So why not reveal the truth?
Truth is often not palatable. Actually, the problem, let me put it this way. There are, it's I who started this narrative. I cleared up a lot of cobwebs around this particular place and a lot of confusion. I cleared the muddy waters, as it was, and I've clarified to the extent which I started this narrative now, which has been now mainstream now. There are essentially 3 theories of Subhash Chandra Bose's death. Earlier, people were confused because people were saying different kind of, they were making up stories. I don't know why. For example, an American journalist, for whatever reason, he was a Pulitzer Award-winning journalist. He said that Subhash was captured by American forces and killed. No, that's nonsense. There's no such thing. Americans were nowhere near that area. In fact, if it were, they would have, very gladly would have acknowledged. But there's nothing. It's completely cock and bull story. So there were many theories about Netaji, what happened to his fate, but only 3 stand out. And these things, as I clarified, and today it has become the mainstream narrative. The government view, the view which government will support, that he died in a plane crash in present-day Taiwan on 18th of August 1945. The other view, which is mostly propagated by people like Dr. Subramanian Swamy and General G.D. Bakshi and others, which is the India's #1 biggest conspiracy theory, which you talk to people in the government, as I was doing earlier, even people who served in the intelligence, and they all talk about it privately. So do ministers privately. This is the gossip #1, private. And according to this conspiracy theory, and God forbid this should be true, that Netaji did not die in any plane crash. He was in Soviet Russia, where he was bumped off at the behest of Pandit Nehru. And I said, God forbid this should be true, because nothing can be more outrageous than anything else. This is how it is. It's been openly stated by so many people, and Subramanian Swamy is very vocal about it. Mainstream media, also have carried news to this effect, and people talk about it everywhere. In fact, as I know. And the third view, these are options. Option #1, plane crash. No, he did not die in Taiwan, Taipei. He did not die. He died in Siberia, in some dungeon, in some gulag. And the third option, which is a wild card entry of some sort, and for which you have to blame me entirely for, because I revived this entire case. It was there earlier, but it is the so-called Gumnami Baba issue. There was some Baba who lived in Ayodhya. He died in 1985, and he was Subhash Chandra Bose. This obviously doesn't make any sense on the face of it. And I recall a very famous film based on John le Carre's Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. So it's a very famous dialogue in the things are not what they seem. Things aren't always what they seem. Anyhow, the problem now, if you look at it from the yardstick of pure facts and evidence, if it is proven for the sake of the argument that Netaji did die in a plane crash in Taiwan, and you have clear evidence for it, obviously there's no point. He wouldn't be there in Russia. So if he has died in 45 in Taiwan, he couldn't be alive in Russia. This is all cock and bull story. So if I can establish without any reasonable doubt that he died in Taiwan, so he cannot be dead in Russia. Now, if somebody were to establish without any shadow of doubt that he died in Russia, you have Russian soldiers, killed him. There's a firing squad. This is his grave. We have done the DNA testing. This is a photograph of his dead body. So you have to have a clear evidence. You just cannot say somebody told me so. No. So if you have this kind of a thing again, so then it means that he did not die in Taiwan, and he couldn't be in Ayodhya as a Baba, because if he's dead in Russia in 1953, because people blame Stalin for it, Stalin died in 53. So if he died in Russia in 53, he cannot be dead either in Taiwan or in Ayodhya. Likewise, if we can establish that he was alive in India in 1970s and 80s, he cannot be dead in either Taiwan or in Russia. Yes, Russia and Taiwan will become very, I would like to know what happened in Taiwan and Russia, because they are linked to this case, but it's academic. From evidence point of view, all I have to do is to establish one of these angles are true, and you have maximum evidence. Now, the problem with the plain theory, 97, there's a demand that bring Subhash Bose's ashes to India, lying in Ronkoji Temple in Japan. Unwittingly, then Defense Minister of the country, Mulayam Singh Ji, made a statement that I will do it. And somebody went to court, Calcutta High Court. And Prabhashankar Mishra Ji was the Chief Justice of the Calcutta High Court in those days. You know that we have a custom that the judges of the High Courts, the Chief Justices are not from that state. Lest people start assuming that some Bengali gave the judgment out of emotion. First of all, Bengalis are not very keen watch sports. That is a myth. That all Bengalis are Netaji Bhakt. No, they are not. I would say that there's a long history of Gandhi Bhakti in Bengal. And the Bengali elites are not bothered about Subhash Bose. Only probably people in the street, 10%, they are bothered. So that's again one of the biggest myths, that all Bengalis are very big time Netaji Bhakt. No, they are not. If they were, things would not have reached this level. They would have been resolved many, many, many years ago. So Prabhashankar Mishra, I met him, he's no more, but anyhow, I'm quoting his judgment. So this is not coming from what he told me. What he told me was very atrocious, but what he wrote in his court judgment, he asked the government lawyer, what is your stand? People want to, you are saying, they are saying they want to bring these ashes, but the petitioners say these ashes are of not of Netaji's. You first establish their Netaji's ashes, then bring them. What is your stand? So government cannot lie to a judge who has set his mind on finding the truth. You can spin doctors can bamboozle a TV anchor, but it's not that easy with a judge, especially judge who's keen about the case. And there's another very interesting thing you would appreciate. Every time in our country, we've had a non-Congress government. There is some development in Netaji case. In fact, there was a development even when Narasimha Rao was prime minister. So I would say whenever we have a government which is not from a particular family, there's always some development. So luckily, it was Devi Gowda who was the prime minister in those days. So this was not. Come to think of it, it was the first time India talked to Russia about Netaji, which is why it's a very fascinating case. It was when VP Singh became the prime minister. Otherwise, Panditji was definitely not in favor of an inquiry. We didn't want to talk to Russia about it. So did Mrs. Gandhi. And then this was Rajiv Gandhi. First time we talked to Russia about Netaji, we opened our mouth, even though it was still very timid way of asking. It was when VP Singh was prime minister. Anyhow, so the government lawyer counsel on record told court, the plain cash theory is riddled with loopholes. The eyewitness account is sketchy, is contradictory. Let me add to it, there's nothing. It's just it's a hearsay. Some people said the plain cash happened. But when they open their mouth, they start giving out different kind of details which don't add up. You don't have the dead body, you don't have pictures of dead body, you don't have contemporary records, and whatever you have is confusion. There's a lot of confusion. In fact, you see a lot of records suggesting the man was going towards Russia. In fact, government concealed this information to people of this country. Right from the day one British intelligence, they had an inquiry done and they found out that the man was Russia bound. So there was some kind of a ploy. And they didn't believe it. Americans did not believe that whatever Japanese are saying is not truthful. So that means the plain cash theory has some evidence, but it is essentially in the realm of eyewitness and hearsay. Then we come to the issue of the Netaji was killed in Russia theory. Now, here the problem is that whatever evidence has come on record, credible record, it's by, you may ask me, what is the legally admissible evidence that Netaji was in Russia after 1945? Well, I'll put a counter question. What is the legally admissible evidence that Dawood Ibrahim is in Pakistan? None. But you know it and I know it, he's there. We can't prove it in a court of law, because in order to prove in a court of law that Dawood Ibrahim is sitting in Karachi, Mr. Ibrahim will have to file an affidavit in a court in Mumbai and say, my name is Dawood Ibrahim, I'm sitting in Karachi. That will become the legally admissible evidence. But you know it, when Americans went to Abbottabad, did they have any legally admissible evidence? If they had gone to a court of law in India, "Okay, look, this is the intelligence we have got. We have seen a long, thin, tall man walking. That is the imagery coming from the outer space, and somebody who was carrying an audio tape of Bin Laden's comment. We saw this man entering this house 2 years ago." Do you think this kind of evidence, if somebody, they were hypothetically speaking, Americans were to present in a court of law in India and say, "Is this sufficient evidence to go and kill him?" They said no. In any case, Indians are harbingers of peace for mankind, so we will say no, we don't do it. But this is not how the real world functions. So this is sufficient. In fact, there's a report of the intelligence which I discussed with the former IB director, and he told me interesting thing. Look, what happens, in journalism, in research, and also in intelligence, if you have three different sources independent of each other, if they converge on the same point, it is gospel truth. Three people, one fellow sitting in Africa, he says Bin Laden is in Abbottabad. Other fellow sitting in Delhi, he said Bin Laden is in Abbottabad. And third fellow sitting somewhere in somewhere in Uganda, he's saying Bin Laden, and all have no connection with each other. Well, take it. It's there, it's truth. So he was explaining the report that I showed him, which is a declassified report, which Government of India by mistake declassified. So there were information coming from all sides that Subhash Chandra Bose is in Russia. Even Russians were saying that, Russian diplomats were saying that he's in Russia. So this is not admissible in court of law as an evidence, because they don't take IB reports as unless until the officer concerned comes before a court of law and swears in the name of God whatever is telling is truth or not truth. In this case, the people have long died. So, but we do have a report. So the problem is so this is how. So all the evidence which has come on record shows that Subhash was in Russia. He sought asylum, and he was given the asylum. There is no mention of his death. It does not make any sense. When people such as Subramaniam Swamy, make outrageous statements that Stalin killed Netaji at the behest of Pandit Nehru, it does not seem to know a single thing about the history of those days. Stalin was not on good terms with us. In fact, he thought very poor of Panditji and Gandhiji. Some researchers went to Russia, and then they came back and they said publicly that they found in some of the notings Stalin called Panditji a political prostitute. So Stalin is abusing Nehru every day. The Russians did not even send flowers when Gandhiji was killed. They are on not good terms with us. In fact, Panditji sent his own sister as India's first, plenipotentiary or ambassador to that country. Stalin did not grant her audience.
Right.
So why would that man would kill Subhash Bose, who had good relations with Russians even earlier? Russians had saved his life in 1942 when he went out of this country. He was in Russia for 10 days. It was from Russia he reached Germany, and he was on good terms with them, and he sought asylum. So why would nobody kills a golden goose, which will, goose will give you golden eggs? It doesn't add up.
Absolutely.
And then, so the whole, now comes the very, the problem area. The problem area, as much as we wouldn't want to believe it, and I was a Delhiite. I mean, I was born, brought up in Delhi. I mean, I would not imagine in the wildest imagination of mine that Netaji would be alive until 85 and sitting in a place called Faizabad. पागल हो गए आप क्या? मैं जब ऑफिस में था, मुझे याद है हम लोग the whole thing started with my inquiring into this matter as part of a Hindustan Times. तो वहाँ पे अब लोगों ने थोड़ी फोट कर दी कि आप आरएसएस के एजेंट हो आप लोग. मुझे पता नहीं कि हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स किस जमाने में आरएसएस का एजेंट था, बट एनी हो. तो वहाँ पे हमने डिडक्शन निकाला कि साहब ये तो प्लेन कैश की थोड़ी तो गलत दिख रही है. तो हमारा मुखर्जी कमीशन में हमें गवाही दी है. Witness number 48 was Pranab Mukherjee, 50 was me. We was examined the same day. That is my footnote in history. And then I remember somebody, my colleague was telling me यहाँ से कुछ लोग आए हैं यूपी से, और वो कहते हैं कि ये कोई गुमनामी बाबा कोई सुभाष चंद्र बोस था. मैंने कहा पागल हो गए. सुभाष बोस कहाँ से आ जाएगा फैजाबाद में? गुमनामी क्या? व्हाट काइंड ऑफ नेम इज दैट? इज सो ऑफ पुटिंग दिस. मैं हिंदी स्पीकर, हिंदी इज माय फर्स्ट लैंग्वेज, और मुझे भी वो बड़ा अटपटा लगता है. क्या अजीब सा वर्ड कॉइन कर दिया आपने, गुमनामी बाबा करके. क्या पागल हो आपने? क्या बकवास है? भगा सालों को यहाँ से. दिस इज व्हाट आई टोटली व्हाट वोंट इवन कंसीडर. नेताजी को इतने, एंड देन 85 राजीव गांधी के टाइम पे हम बात कर रहे हैं सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर की, 1800s की, गांधी जी के टाइम की. नेताजी की तो उम्र ही बहुत ज्यादा होगी उस टाइम पे, कहाँ से आ जाएंगे? देन आई रियलाइज वन डे कि नेताजी की डेट ऑफ बर्थ क्या है? 1897. So okay, if he was 1897 born, by 1985 he would have been 88 years of age. I lost my father at the age of 97. I don't even consider 88 to be very advanced age, to be very frank. My father was fit as a fiddle until the last, almost. So the Well, Morarji Bhai was 1 year older than Subhash Chandra Bose. He became our prime minister in 1977. So biologically, well, Subhash was much younger compared to Gandhiji. Sardar Patel was 22 years older than Subhash was. People don't know the difference, age of 22 years. And Panditji was 9 years older than Subhash Bose. So Subhash Bose was much younger. And he was one man versus the entire Congress working committee, and yet he gave it back to them when they all pounced upon him because of whatever reason, including jealousy. So the problem lies this. Mukherjee Commission went into this issue of Faizabad Gumnami Baba, and I'm talking about Mukherjee Commission was formed when I told you in 1997 people went to court, and Prabha Shankar Mishra, the judge, wanted to know the government's position, and government said on record the eyewitness account is not matching. So the judge ordered you must have a proper inquiry done because you yourself are admitting that the death is not very clear. So government was forced to form a commission. The decision was taken by Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, and they formed a commission of inquiry. And as per the protocol, they want the Chief Justice of India was asked to nominate one retired judge. I think it was Justice Thomas who was supposed to be the first contender, but he didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. Then they chose Justice Manoj Kumar Mukherjee, former Supreme Court judge. And he thought he probably, he's being a Bengali, probably would be help. That might be a consideration. And he was a very clean person. Unfortunately, he died last year, just with Mukherjee. So Mukherjee Commission began functioning, and they looked into the Russian angle. They looked into the Pen Kashuri, and they went to the Faizabad, the Gumnami Baba issue. The commission report says there is credible eyewitness account this man was Netaji, especially more so when there were people who had seen Netaji, had seen this man also and identified him as such. So you would understand that credible eyewitness account means what? It means that in most cases of murders, if a person goes before a court of law and says, yes, I saw this man pulling the trigger, the other person will be hanged. That is sufficient. Eyewitness account is sufficient to hang, to call for a death sentence. So it's very credible. In fact, if there's a clash between eyewitness account and in some cases and DNA test, it's the eyewitness account which probably will be probably more supreme. More will take. So we even have such kind of orders coming from the court. So eyewitness. Second thing, Mukherjee said that the documentary evidence, the correspondence between the so-called Gumnami Baba. This term Gumnami Baba was coined by local media after this man died. He was never known by this name when he was alive. So this correspondence between him and his followers support the view that he was Netaji. So eyewitness account is matching, the documentary evidence is matching. But the problem there is, then the commission wrote in the report that there is no clinching evidence this man is Netaji, because his handwriting were tested by government expert and they say negative, and there were some teeth were found at his place and they were tested and they were reports are negative. Report is negative. So there is no clinching. So that means there is evidence, but it is not clinching. So now, in other words, what prevented the Gumnami Baba theory to be upheld by the commission were the negative reports coming from the government lab. Now, the same commission of inquiry in its report very clearly outlined that the government of India was coming in the way of the truth. They were hiding things. They were concealing things. No problem. तो ये हो जाती कि आप लोगों ने उनसे टेस्टिंग क्यों करवाई? But the problem, Justice Mukherjee's hands were tied. So on so forth. As a journalist, I was aware of all this thing. Obviously, people would ask me, when there was no DNA match between Gumnami Baba and Subhash and Gumnami Baba and Subhash Chandra Bose, why in the world are you carrying on with this story for the last 20 years? And I tell them कि मेरे सर पे सींग लगे हुए हैं, थोड़ा सा मुझे भी मालूम है DNA testing क्या होती है. And I tell people a story, and the story goes like this: कि I'm an MA in political science, and when we joined the university, our teacher told us, he said, there are, there's a biology is a science, and chemistry is science. Physics is science, but mother of all science is political science. Sari science ki maa hoti hai political science. I explained, I think somewhere in some before IIT students, these are, suppose you say this is a crockery, piece of crockery, but I can give you a report. These are the ashes of Alauddin Khilji. I have to go and get a report done. This is a country where you can get the driving license of Barack Obama. Somebody produced a Aadhaar card for Hanuman ji. तो यहाँ पे टेम्परिंग होती है, बड़ा कॉमन है. दिस इज वेरी डीएनए की रिपोर्ट बड़ी फंसी हुई यहाँ पे. दिस इज डन विद पॉलिटिकल साइंस व्हिच कैन डू एनीथिंग. वी न्यू फ्रॉम डे वन, and I can say now because Justice Mukherjee is no more, I have been writing about it, but I never really, I never revealed my source, because I would always write sources in the commission told us. No, Justice Mukherjee himself told us. He had suspicions that the government reports are fudged. And in 2010, he was caught on camera off the record, and somebody recorded it. And that video is available everywhere. He said, I'm 100% convinced he was the same person, but he could not prove it. Now, what has happened in the last couple of years, we have been able to collect formidable evidence to show that the reports are fudged. And in fact, we have got far, 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 far superior handwriting experts' opinion coming from America and India. So, for example, in DNA testing, the funny thing is, I mean, there are instances of DNA tests being fudged in Delhi and Calcutta. There's a different ballgame. But the point is, the problem with what is the DNA testing? The testing is you put a sample in a machine, and the machine does the reading. There's no human intervention. It will bring out a chart, which is called either electropherogram or raw data. It is the reading of the raw data or the electropherograms. There are certain peaks which are shown in the graph. That is called the DNA report. So an DNA expert basically will do the testing, which machine will do it, and he will make the reading out of that report. Now the problem with that thing, that the electropherogram in this case is missing, because we were specifically told by insider that they've destroyed it, because the electropherogram and the reports are two different things. And so this likewise, so we've had some experts, have taken in our books, and especially the new one which is common in Hindi, we have taken even Australian experts comment. I showed in both reports. He's saying, this is not adding up. And which expert in the world will give a report without an electropherogram? It doesn't happen. Unless in India we have discovered a new science whereby we can produce reports without an electropherogram. I mean, in that case, these guys should be given Nobel Prize for whatever chemistry, because this is absolutely astounding. You cannot have a report of DNA without an electropherogram. Another interesting thing you would find very intriguing as a former journalist. In other countries in Europe and America, advanced countries, first world countries, you do a test today and the result will come out tomorrow. I mean, it used to be like a few months and weeks, older days, now probably small, but still the process is same. You do it today, the result will come tomorrow. Right. But in India, we have such science, I don't know what is it science or paranormal stuff. 6 months prior to the DNA test was conducted in this case, the result was done, published in newspaper. How did you know? I mean, unless until these guys have, people who are, running this Anand Vijay Patrika, which is not in favor of this case, which has a clear linkage to Congress party, unless they are having some kind of a time machine, they cannot explain, because there was a case against them in Press Council of India. And they themselves said, we got the, scoop from inside. What scoop? How do we know this is not there? This is happening after 6, 7 weeks, months. You cannot know the finding of a DNA test 6 months before it is performed. And if you know it, either you have a time machine, or you are some kind of somebody having some psychic powers, you can see future, or somebody has planted a fake story. Somebody is trying to create a fake narrative. So likewise, there are multiple. Now, since we didn't have access to the DNA, these teeth which were said to be of Gumnami Baba, there's another problem. Whether there was a long story, the ruling of the Allahabad High Court in 2013, in which they said there is no proof that their teeth belong to this man. So we can even argue that we have to keep this DNA test aside. The only thing remains in the fray is the negative reports of the handwriting experts, Government of India. Now, take for example the case of Mr. Dr. S.K. Mandal, Forensic Science Laboratory, Calcutta. God knows what science they are into, but this is Forensic Science Laboratory, Calcutta. Usually, an expert is supposed to give in some details about, why he or she thinks that the handwriting is matching or not matching. This is not a case of simply matching a signature. The free-flowing handwriting of Gumnami Baba in English and Bengali, free-flowing. So who is this person? So in 2 pages, he writes the first page में अपना नाम लिख दिया, lab का नाम लिखा, second में लिखा जी handwriting match नहीं कर रही. Now I give you another example. I mean, there's काफी सारी बातें मैं आपको example दे रहा हूँ. हम लोग I went to US for my lecture. Second time when I went there, I asked my friends wanted to support me, because people of Indian origin outside India, they're probably in some more patriot than we are, even though they may be holding passport of that country. So my American Indian friends offered me, why don't we, help you in this case? He said, we can get the DNA test done here. I said, I don't have samples with me because the government won't let me touch them. But we do have the handwriting samples of this man. We do have Subhash Bose. Find an expert. Don't tell him what it's all about. And give me an American. So we all zeroed on Mr. Kurt Baggett of Texas, a very renowned private expert in America, experience of US Army and so on and so forth. He follows the same protocol as the FBI does. And we didn't tell him a thing about it. He didn't tell him a thing. He did not know what is it. Neither Subhash Bose, not my name is also not there. Not that the old man will not look into Google and all that, but he did not know a thing about it. He was approached by an Indian fellow and he gave him their two samples, sample A, sample B. उसको नहीं मालूम कि एक सुभाष बोस का है और एक गुमनामी बाबा का है. 63 का हैंडराइटिंग उसका है. एंड दे वर लॉन्ग, काफी 2-3 पेज में बहुत सारी हैंडराइटिंग थी. उसने अपनी रिपोर्ट दी एंड ही हैज गिवन 49 पेजेस रिपोर्ट डिटेल में. आई एम गोइंग टू विलिंग टू गो टू एनी कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ एंड दिस इज सेम पर्सन. बाद में हमने टीवी में शो करा, हमने रात को आनंद नरसिम्हन CNN IBN के अंदर कर्ट साहब आए, उन्होंने बाइट दिया. द ओल्ड मैन वोक अप इन द मॉर्निंग 6 o'clock टेक्सास टाइम, इट वाज इवनिंग हियर इन इंडिया. खुल्लम खुल्ला वो बाइट अवेलेबल है यूट्यूब पे. एंड ही सेइंग द सेम पर्सन, आई डिड नॉट थिंक अबाउट दिस थिंग, इज द सेम पर्सन, आई कैन गो टू कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ एंड एक्सप्लेन. पहले जब ये बात चल रही थी टीवी में, तो हमने उनको बोला कि आप कलकत्ता में मंडल साहब भी बैठे हुए, आप रिटायर हो गए, उनको फ़ोन कीजिए, और उनको ये बोलिए, मैंने उनको मैसेज कन्वे किया कि तुम्हारा बाप आ रहा है रात को टीम में, तुम्हें हैंडराइटिंग हम सिखाते हैं कि हैंडराइटिंग कैसे होती है. टेस्ट जो तुम 2-2 पन्ने की रिपोर्टें चेप रहे हो गवर्नमेंट के प्रेशर में आकर के, यू थिंक वी आर फुल्स. सो दिस इज द लॉन्ग एंड शॉर्ट ऑफ इट. द DNA and handwriting reports were first. On that basis, the story was killed. So that means this is the most astounding thing you might have heard in your life. The evidence is showing the man was alive. He was in India in 70s and 80s. Therefore, the plane crash story and the Russian angle is not correct.
Absolutely.
It's another matter that if you talk about, there was no plane crash. The story was planted. I visited Russia in December 44. And the whole thing was planned then. He talks in great detail about, can you imagine a Baba sitting and talking about how the Russian Gulag system functions? If you and I were posted, suppose today in a place like Basti, which is back of the beyond area even today, and suppose you are my boss and I'm working for the local intelligence unit, and I come and tell you, look, the Baba has come to the town, Baba subscribes to the Time magazine of America. You will tell him, go and raid his house. I want to see which Baba reads Time magazine. Today, 60s, PG Woodhouse entire collection, Charles Dickens entire collection, Encyclopedia Britannica पढ़ते हैं बाबा जी देश में, PG Woodhouse पढ़ते हैं, शेक्सपियर के नावल पढ़ते हैं. और कमेंट मार रहे हैं ऊपर वो हिस्ट्री ऑफ मैन सिविलाइजेशन विल्ड एंड एलियल डोरेंट, सारे कट मार्क के ऊपर लिखा हुआ है. वॉर क्राइम्स ट्रायल पे सोच किताबें आ रही है, नेताजी की डेथ इंक्वायरी भी रिपोर्टें आ रही हैं, कमेंट्स आ रहे हैं. कौन से बाबे पढ़ता है? रीडर डाइजेस्ट पढ़ते हैं बाबे हमारे यहाँ पे. एनी बाबा हु हैज इवन स्मैटरिंग ऑफ इंग्लिश, ही नोज ही विल गो टू अमेरिकन यूरोप कंट्रीज ऑल दैट. Who is this man sitting there and he's talking, security, intelligence, he's talking about things which are not even we are coming to know from declassification. How does he know all these things? How does he know what's happening in China? It is not in public domain. So it's fantastic stuff. This is not what it seems. There is no Baba there. It's a cover. The man is sitting behind a curtain, he's got a cigar in his mouth and he's rattling about, security, intelligence. What happened in Second World War? What happened thereafter? Stalin did not treat me like an enemy. My own people did. Every word that he spoke was extraordinary.
Absolutely.
So this is how it goes. So it's very fascinating.
And finally, before I let you go, Anuj, I mean, since we are here, we are to talk about, will we ever know the truth?
But my impression, frankly, is that today, that very fact you and I are able to talk about it at, for an hour or even more. There is I think if let's put it this way, the government of India has been propagating for last 75 years at our expense that India became free because we launched a non-violent movement, Ahimsa, and Angrez are very nice people, they left just like that because it shows that the British in good light. And once it shows the British in good light, all these sahibs and Rai Bahadurs who were licking their feet, they were able to send the children to England and then to other. So this whole idea sells very well in Europe and America. And you know very well how the elites of our country, how they're fashioned. Everybody wants eventually sabka family mein settle hona hai. So they are towing that line. But you know it and I know it that people of this country do not buy this theory. They all know this did not happen because of this, and everybody knows that sufficient documents available. There was a near revolt in the armed forces because of INA, because that for 12 हुए थे, पूरा revolt हो गया था army के अंदर, and all documents are available today. And we have even Clement Attlee admitting eventually that it just Gandhi's was minimal, and he took the decision. It's a very interesting thing. When I tell people about Clement Attlee and other things, so people say, no, he was not wrong. He was wrong. I met a professor in JNU and he was, अरे यार ऐसे 1,500 प्रोफेसर खड़े होते हैं ब्रिटिश हाई कमीशन के सामने वीजा लेने के लिए, तुम्हारा कुछ have some sense of proportion. Clement Attlee, and these people, they were the decision makers. He was the Prime Minister of England. He was not a professor in JNU. को अकल की बात करो. Don't cite any writer when you're talking about the Prime Minister of England, and that Prime Minister who took the decision to set India free. तो इस तरह की बकवास यहाँ पे लोग कर, तो इसीलिए पब्लिक इस बात को नहीं मानती है. यहाँ देश में ऑलरेडी एक अवेयरनेस है कि इंडिया बिकेम फ्री बिकॉज ऑफ पासपोर्ट्स. लाइकवाइज द गवर्नमेंट व्यू इज कि नेताजी डाइड इन अ प्लेन क्रैश, बट कॉमन पब्लिक डज नॉट बिलीव इट. मेरा मानना है कि एंड स्पेशली विद द ऑनसेट ऑफ सोशल मीडिया, बिकॉज दिस काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग वाज नॉट पॉसिबल on दूरदर्शन. Even on mainstream channels today, even though I have friends, the format is such that I will be sitting with 5 people and they will be at my throats, and spend doctors, keep on, so you can't say anything, and this kind of a thing requires, some kind of a discussion that we are having for last 1 hour, unless you can't understand the thing. So because now we can do, thanks to social media, thanks to YouTube, and thanks to all these Zoom and etc. So we are able to carry our words to lakhs and lakhs of people. So I think in time to come, people will accept. Already they will accept our lack of theory. So government will continue to say this thing, no, dedi hame agadi bana khadak bana dal, but people will mock it. Government is not bothered because the elite class is not bothered about who's saying what on Twitter. They are sitting in the in their ivory towers and they are okay with it. So they don't give a damn about it. Eventually वैसे भी खानदान में settle जाना है, 4-2 साल की बात है, उसके बाद हम अमेरिका चले जाएंगे, हमें क्या, तो उन्हें फर्क नहीं पड़ता. लेकिन public knows the truth. So eventually the truth about Netaji and this Gumnami Baba theory will prevail. I'm sure of that thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I hope the truth prevails, and the truth prevails sooner rather than later, because the entire nation wants to know exactly what happened. Anuj Dar, a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you so much for being here on Bharata First and explaining this wonderful theory and this wonderful information and putting it all into perspective for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it on this edition of Frank Talk. See you all again next time.